man. I know whenever I'm coming, you're laughing a lot.
Roosevelt, good afternoon. How are you, bud?
I am awesome.
And how's that street that's named after you out in your hometown there?
It's just fine.
Is it a nice area there?
It's pretty nice. My mom, she still lives on the block. So
okay. She lives?
She lives there. That's the block that I grew up on.
All right. Is she just insufferable then? If somebody walks down that street, she's going, it's my son.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that. It's still pretty cool though. My oldest son, his name is Roosevelt.
Okay.
As well, so it's he gets a kick out of it.
Well, excellent. Well, again, thanks for coming out here today. I've been excited to sit down and talk with you, and I'm glad we finally got some time to connect. And let's go for it. I know you're teaching in your hometown now, but let's talk about the musical upbringing and maybe some mentors and how you got to where you are today.
All right. Well, yeah, so I was born and raised in Harvey. I started band in the 4th grade. My biological father, and I say that because he wasn't necessarily in my household.
Sure.
But he was a musician, well-known musician throughout his teenage years in Harvey. He played guitar. So I knew about his experience in Harvey relating to music. And also I had an uncle who played. And so at an early age, I wanted to kind of follow in their footsteps. So even though I didn't really know him well, I kind of wanted to, my father played, so I also wanted to play, but never had any formal training. So I started band in the 4th grade. I started on trombone. And as a band director now, I look back, and it's funny because I know some band directors will take the largest kid and give the largest kid the biggest horn, during that fitting of the instruments.
Sure.
But I played trombone. 5th grade year, I had to get out of band because we couldn't afford the instrument.
Okay.
So I got back in band in 6th grade year. My 6th grade year, my band director, he told me if I played tuba, I wouldn't have to actually pay for the instrument.
Okay.
So I played tuba. And during this time, I had a little experience at piano. I was the kid that would play like Axel Foley. Okay. Remember that bum, 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 bum. Yeah. So every time I saw a piano, and so I started messing with the piano, and I played piano in the jazz band.
That was the 80s, 90s Careless Whisper.
Exactly. Yeah. So I did that in piano, little bass in middle school, and so
so you were naturally just attracted to music.
Yes.
At that point.
Yes.
And then so tell me about family. Like was mom pretty encouraging of that at that
Absolutely.
point? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, she felt really bad about having to pull me out of band in 5th grade. That was a big deal, but definitely, she was very, very supportive.
Was it a big family? How many any siblings or anything like that?
So I have a brother he's 2 years younger than I am.
Okay.
He didn't care to join band or learn music.
That's okay.
Right. Yeah. Well, he's doing just fine now. He chose athletics, and now he's a trainer for professional teams.
Okay.
So he's totally fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was my mom, my brother, and I. We lived together. I had a stepfather from 4th grade through, I think, junior year of high school. So I had someone, and he was pretty good. We didn't have the closest relationship, but he was there.
Okay.
So
we go on. We are in band. We're doing trombone. We're doing tuba. Mm-hmm. We're playing the theme song from Beverly Hills Cop,
right,
and all of those things there. So can you tell me about maybe some of your early music teachers?
So John Weber, he was my elementary and middle school teacher. He had a co-director, Dave Sherman. And so Dave Sherman, Mr. Sherman, we spent a lot of time during elementary years. However, junior high, John Weber, I would say he gave me a phenomenal foundation. And I just remember looking at him, and as you said earlier, you kind of mentioned how that was a dream job for you coming back here. I remember being in 8th grade saying I would one day want to come back and do what he does, because he was so passionate about what he did, and he took so much interest in the kids. And as I said, my mom, she did a great job, but I went to my first live concert with Mr. Weber.
Okay.
He would take a group of students to Ravinia. I heard Canadian brass for the first time with Mr. Weber, and that changed my life. So I had Mr. Weber as he was very key in my upbringing.
Is he still around?
He is. He's retired. He still plays, still travels. I was able to do a dinner where I invited alums from all over the country.
Okay.
And we surprised him at Brooks a few years ago, and he really appreciated that.
So tell me about maybe Harvey at that point too, because as I'm sitting with you, I have a maybe similar story growing up. We're coming from a broken home,
Right.
Stepdad, not a lot of money at some point.
Right.
Some points okay.
Right.
And it's interesting because I think some people's views on Joliet might be the same as people's views on Harvey. So tell me about your hometown at that point.
In the 80s and 90s, I remember we had gangs, right? We had drugs.
But let me ask you this: what does that mean for people that have never seen that?
Okay. So we had to walk home from school, elementary school, 6th grade, walk home. There were certain parks that don't go to because they're having a gang meeting. So I guess it was just common to know. Were we afraid? No, because there were certain. It was a code of conduct with gangs. You don't mess with children. You don't mess with the elderly. So certain things, you don't wear certain colors, and you just knew it. Right, so you don't go to the park, or if you go to the park, you have to be gone by this time because later on a certain gang is coming. They're having their meetings. We just knew that. Yeah. And with that said, there was a strong sense of community. So even though my father wasn't in the home, I had friends who had both parents. I had friends who had a father but not the mother, and everybody took responsibility in the raising of everybody. Sure, it was a village. And so looking during the time, I thought I was living the life. I didn't know any different. It wasn't until, years later that I look back and say, wow, I thought my mom was rich, So I didn't really feel it.
Yeah. I always thought growing up, rich meant you had a second story to your house.
Right.
Like, I'll never forget that. I had friends with stairs. Whoa. You guys are living large. You guys probably have meatloaf every night.
Or Beggar's Pizza. If it's Beggar's Pizza, once a month, you knew that was payday. It's I'm serious. That was a big deal in my house. Beggar's Pizza. What's interesting, and I tell people this story. There was a time, and I remember wanting to join a gang that several of my friends joined. Okay, and by this time I was in high school, and it was known that my career would be in music, and I wanted to join a gang. I said, I'm like, oh man, they're doing this, they're doing that, hanging out, having money. Yeah. And they literally was ready to jump me and told me to go home because you have greater things to do. Okay. And this is around the time I had joined the Suburban Youth Symphony Orchestra, but they literally kicked me out and said, no, you're not doing this. Sure. And and I think about that all the time. And as bad as gangs were, I knew it was bad at the time, but I had a level of respect for, that code. And for whatever reason, people joined. But again, I didn't have to worry about a whole lot myself. Yeah, They kind of protected me so that I can do some things, which is why I feel obligated to come back and do the same for others.
That's a crazy story.
Man, yeah. I've been,
How old were you?
This particular time, I was 15. 15. I had a buddy of mine who had a car, 16 years. We used to hang out at the skating rink, and I remember one night it was about to be a gang fight. They started. Everybody went home to get their guns, and he said, "I'm taking you home." And at that time I said, take me home. But just to know that I could have easily been involved in that. Sure. But
and what is it then? Is it the short term reward of the money, of the freedom at that point that you're thinking?
It was definitely the money, because at that time I knew my mom. She didn't have a lot. Sure. And I remember feeling bad, asking her for certain things. And I thought to myself, if I was able to do this myself, she wouldn't have to worry about it. Okay. And so I remember going to my cousin, asking him to, help me sell drugs, can I get involved in that? And they wouldn't let me do anything. Wow. And I appreciate that now, but I wanted to do it because I wanted to help my mom out. Okay. And I was 15, so I couldn't get a job or wasn't able to. I know I was really involved in band, obviously. Sure. So I didn't want to stop doing that, but
you couldn't get the job, and the gang didn't want you.
Right, so right.
You just weren't very employable.
Right. Right.
So we're in Harvey there. That's so we're going through what, like middle school or so.
So yeah, so I kind of jumped up to high school, early high school a little bit, but it was just known that this kid over there on Ashland, he has something, he's involved in music, and
Sure.
And a lot of the musicians from the area at that time, the really good ones, they never went through formal training.
Okay.
So it was a big deal that I knew how to read music. So from my father's side of the family, as far as, them telling me, he didn't know how to read music, but he was really good. He played blues and things like that. So it was a big push for me to go ahead and learn how to read and be able to articulate what's on the paper and things like that.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What, when we think about then, basically where you got to, I mean, what did the work ethic look like at that point? Were you constantly practicing, or was it, here's the tubas at school, I can't bring it home?
Well, if I was to be completely honest,
Yeah.
the tubas that I had at school that was sent home with me, my mom, she actually made me practice in the garage.
Okay.
Because it was too much noise. I mean, that's, and we laugh about it now.
Yeah.
But I didn't do a lot of practice in the middle school.
Okay.
I will say most of my...
So you're like 95% of children. Okay.
Right. And so the most of my growth came from what the band director was doing at school.
Sure.
And I enjoyed being in the band room, so we would have late practices. So I enjoyed all of that. But when I came home, it was, hanging out outside, playing basketball.
Outside. Okay.
Life.
Okay.
Cartoons and things like that.
Sure. So then we're looking at then like a class period then that was, here's this architect that comes in and says, boom, I'm going to lesson plan really well, or I'm going to have all of my tricks of the trade out here. I'm going to have these kids, and we're going to use our time in the best possible way.
Right.
At that point, is this Weber still?
Mr. Weber, yep.
Weber.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And what's also cool, I want to note about that experience in middle school. I always talk about community. Even today, that's like a big thing for me, community. It takes a village, because that's how it was for me. I'm also a visual artist.
Yeah.
So I used to love to draw, muralist and things like that. Well, if you have band, you can't have art. So I was also a basketball player in middle school. I would have my band director, basketball coach, and art teacher work together to make sure I succeeded in all three areas. So what Mr. Weber would do is on Fridays, even though I wasn't on the roster to art class, he would still send me to art class on Fridays. And so every Friday I had art class with Mrs. Woods, which looking back, I appreciate that now. With the basketball coaches, what they would do is they would allow the band students to flip. So you either had gym second period or third period. You had band either second period or third period. So they work together so that now the band can have sectionals.
Okay.
The following week, they can have full band, and they would constantly flip and work together for these students. Took those teachers working together to give me the best opportunities possible. And actually all three, basketball, we went downstate and everything. It was good. And back then I was the same height, so I was a tall kid.
Well, and that's great to hear too, because you hear so much about this coach is fighting with the band director or music director over this, that they saw a common cause for the kids in their community.
Absolutely.
That listen, here's a kid that wants to do more. Here's a kid that's saying, please educate me more.
Right. Right.
So let's
do what it takes.
Around.
Yeah. I was also the kid that marched in his football uniform in high school.
Okay.
I was that kid.
You were great for recruitment, right?
Man, I was great. So after I went to Thornridge High School in Dalton, Illinois, with David Ains.
Okay.
Because I can't leave him out. He's the one that became a father to me.
Okay.
And so, high school, I did that. That's where I grew the most.
Yeah.
That experience was, that's the reason why I became a band director. So anyway, after Thornridge.
So what's that mean? He became a father to you?
So entering high school, I wanted to be an engineer. My mom says, yes. Yeah. Well, after meeting him, I told my mom I wanted to be a band director. My mom said, well, if you want to be a band director, I'm not paying for college. And she said this in front of Mr. Ains, David Ains. And this was my freshman year. And
you want to be a bum like him?
And he said, well, you know what? Everything works out right. You won't have to pay anything.
Okay.
You know, and so at that point, he kind of took me under his wings, and it was just it was given that after band practice in the afternoons, we would stay an extra 3 hours just working, talking. He became the person I would talk to about issues, whether it's home, because again, my stepfather, we didn't have a close relationship.
Yeah.
And so I'm spending all this time with Mr. Eanes, and you know, even if it's, you know, girl problems, you know, girl done broke my heart. You know, hey man, you know, what should I do? You know, he says, go practice. But he just became that person that that wouldn't let up. You know, if I was wrong, he'll let me know. If I needed correction, he would correct me. And then, you know, I just began to look up to him early on in high school. And as I progressed in my musical experience in high school, he was right there by my side. He knew when he couldn't do anything for me as a teacher. He knew that he had to call other people and get advice. He just made sure that I was able to participate in other opportunities outside of school. You know, like I said, SISO, Birch Creek, any opportunities that came, he supported that. Yeah. So again, after I left Thornridge, I did go to Northern Illinois University, where I was under the wings of Ron Carter and Charlie Shookett, who was my tuba professor. He's another one that kicked my tail. And then after NIU, I went, you know, started teaching, ended up going to Concordia to get my Type 75 and Argosy to get my doctorate of leadership,
Shoot,
organizational
I forgot to
leadership.
call you Dr. Griffin.
No. Call me Rosie, like my football coaches.
All right, Dr. Mr. Rosie. Here we go.
Yes. Yep. So.
Excellent. So we go through all of that, and that's just a snapshot, right?
Right.
And you do all of that just to end up right back at home.
Right.
So how does that work out? Was that your first job? Were you anywhere before that?
So what was interesting, nothing about my life is traditional.
Okay.
So at NIU, my major was education until my 5th year. And I got to a point where I was just tired. I was tired.
Yeah.
And I switched my major to performance.
Okay.
And so I ended up graduating NIU with a performance degree. And with that performance degree, I left NIU. I started traveling on cruise ships. All I had left was an education block to complete my certification. So I ended up coming back home after traveling on cruise ships, and I ended up getting a substitute certificate.
Okay.
And I was placed in Hazel Crest, Illinois for a long-term sub position. And during that time, while I was in this long-term sub position, I completed my air block. And it just so happened that John Weber was retiring that same year. So I received a call from the superintendent of Harvey Grade Schools at that time. She wanted me to come interview and apply for this position. And mind you, I said that I would never teach middle school. I wanted to be a high school band director. I wanted to have a phenomenal marching band.
Sure.
But in this case, you know, I said, yes, I had to come, you know, back to the hometown. So at that time, I can't say, I wanted to come back and change lives, you know.
Yeah.
But once I actually began to work with Mr. Weber and meet the kids, I fell in love with that. And then I saw the possibilities of changing lives at that time.
So we're going to talk about like the possibilities and everything. What I'd really like to hear are just some of those experiences that you've experienced, but maybe people that haven't experienced working either with low-income students or a high-needs area, things that you didn't think would come up. You know, and I know I didn't prep you for that question.
Right,
Sorry,
right,
but
it's okay.
you have things that come up, and you have issues with students and issues with the community. You've talked about maybe a little bit of the gang situation prior to that. Has there been anything that you're able to talk about since you've been teaching there that maybe people that don't teach low-income students wouldn't deal with?
Yeah,
wouldn't know about?
So teaching in a low-income area, because whenever you see low-income area, people assume low-income students.
Yeah.
And Harvey, even though it was there was a major shift in Harvey, the economics and things like that, with the closing of the steel mills, there was a lot that had changed since I actually went off to college. And so when I was at Brooks and in Harvey, yeah, we had our issues, but a lot has changed. Now we have more abandoned homes.
Okay.
We have students who live on a block. Let's say there's 20 homes on the block. Well, they may live on a block where 12 of those homes are abandoned. and they have to walk past these homes just to get to school. So some of the things that I face, I can be in the classroom with a child whose parent may be well educated, maybe work for the city. Mm-hmm. But then I can also be in a classroom with a student who may be living in an abandoned home, and they have an extension cord getting electric from the house next to them illegally.
Okay.
I've had it where an 8th grade student may actually have to work. I know there's one student when I first got the job at Brooks. They used to always tell us that the students, they have to have the shirts tucked in, and and I'm a first year teacher. I have my certification, and I was young at the time, and I had to let the kids know that I was tough too. I'm from the same hood you're from, So I would see kids and I would tell them to do something, and they would not do it, and I would be offended. Like, what do you mean? I told you to tuck in your shirt. Where this is one student who I used to always have to tell him to tuck in his shirt, and one day he just stormed out the classroom. He said, I'm not tucking in, slammed the door. So now I took it personal. I went after him, and he cursed me out, and now I'm writing referral. He's not going to do this to me. Well, I later found out that this kid, first of all, he walked 2 to 3 miles to school because where he lived wasn't really in district.
Okay.
He walked 2 to 3 miles to school every morning. He's never late to school. I also found out that he had a full-time job. He was 15 in the 8th grade. He had a full-time job working in the kitchen of a restaurant. And he worked there. His mother was one of the servers. It was a diner off of Halsted. And he was the cook. And so he would actually get off of work at about 2 a.m., go home and walk to school, get there on time. And I'm fussing at him about a tucked in shirt.
Yeah.
And so we ended up becoming really, really close, really, really close. But I began to understand that things that are issues for me aren't necessarily major issues for the students that's coming to school. No matter what their issues are, I have to show empathy. I don't have to lower my standards, but I have to understand that when students respond a certain way, when they don't have a certain type of shirt, certain type of shoes, that's not my responsibility. If the school wants to actually correct that, then the school, in my opinion, needs to provide those things for those students to be successful. My job is to educate students and make sure that they are set up for their future, the best future that they can have for themselves. So this particular kid, at that instant, I actually, it was a reality check for me. Yeah. And so that's one instance. I've had to deal with, I don't know if it's a low income thing, but I have had to deal with students who, I had to say it, but, have been molested by family members. And, and when you're a teacher that students actually like, they tend to confide in you. Yeah. And so they'll come to you. And so my first few years, a lot of what I was hearing, I wasn't prepared to deal with that because they don't teach you that in school. Yeah. This is everything outside of the bandstand. But so I've dealt with that. I've dealt with, I've been dealing a lot with students who parents and family members are being murdered. Okay. You have to deal with students being murdered. This year, we actually lost one of our students to gun violence, 6th grade students. And so you have to deal with all of that, not just that student's friends, but the entire building. Yeah. Because as soon as something like that happens, now you have to now it wakes up certain memories for other kids. I've had students raising, 14-year-olds raising younger siblings. So it's quite a bit. And I believe most teachers have to deal with, helping, I won't say deal with, but a lot of teachers will help families. I've actually paid mortgages or rents for family members. I've had to take in students while domestic violence was going on, where parents may have had to go to jail. They call me and ask if I can have so and so stay with me the evening. So I've had to open my home up multiple occasions. And again, when we talk about low income area, maybe these are issues specific to the area, but these are the issues that I've had to experience. But again, not all students are like that. I've also had situations where one of my students, she's getting ready to graduate from med school in a few months. She went to the top med school in the country, yet she's from Harvey.
Yeah,
The home that she grew up in was on a block with several abandoned homes. A block where a lot of drugs. And so, as much as I can say about the unfortunate experiences these kids have, you have kids who are resilient and they go out there and they develop skills and they're actually out there changing the world.
Well, and people like to focus sometimes on the negative parts of that, but when you do think of it, okay, survival trumps Sousa, right? and the other part with that too, that if we can go back a few minutes, that I liked what you said was, I have empathy for this, but I am not lowering my standards.
Right.
So then, based on everything you did there, it sounds like you take a good approach of like, listen, we're still going to have the tucked in shirt, but we got to work through some other things first.
Right.
Here's
Absolutely.
why we have the tucked in shirt.
Absolutely.
And if it's anything, at least out here at Joliet, I always think about like, and I tell our kids here, I said, it's not fair, but you guys have to be dressed to the nines when we go out, because there's already a preconceived notion about you.
Right.
And
I've had those talks as well.
Yeah. And and I said, it's not right. But it's reality. That's just the reality, of it there.
Yeah. And what's really interesting about it is the age that we deal with, that I deal with, that 13, 14-year-old age, 12, 13, 14, the students that I deal with, first of all, they want to know that you're real, that you're genuine.
Yeah.
So many teachers, they put on this teacher
they'll
hat.
call you out.
They'll call you out on it, and then they lose respect for you.
Yeah.
So I've actually come up with this the 3 R's: relationship, respect, response. I believe every teacher has an opportunity to form a relationship with every student. Sometimes it's just by saying hello every morning.
Yeah.
Right? That's a relationship. They can count on you when they walk past you for you to smile and say hello. That's relationship. And because of that relationship, now they get to the point where, you know what, I respect this teacher. So now if I've been saying hello to you every morning for the past 30 days, the next morning when you come past with a untucked shirt, I might say, hey, good morning. Hey, do you mind tucking in the shirt for me? Yeah. Oh, I got it. Okay, yeah, good. I'm sorry. Even though they might take it out when they get it on the other side, but they respect you enough to actually respond.
Yeah.
And I believe we can use the same approach in the classroom. Begin to again have empathy for these for students, no matter what it is. It can be the straight A student. If it can be the student with all F's, none of that matters. Have empathy and then develop a relationship. I understand what you're going through. We still have to tuck in our shirt, but and then that's when they begin to respond, just because they respect you. Not by fear. A lot of teachers feel like they have to fear you. You have to yell. No, I don't yell at all. And around the building, students respect me whether you're in band or not.
Yeah. Well, and I think kids today too, they'll yell back.
They will.
They will. We are just not in that time now of you better toe the straight and narrow. We'll yell back and we'll.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And again, I'm not saying that's a good bad thing. There,
but, and not only will they yell back, they'll go tell their parents, and their parents will come up to the school with their siblings, uncles and aunts, and everybody be yelling at you and meet you in the parking lot. I mean, I've seen that
right before you leave.
Right.
Too. So, tell me this then too. Do any parts of your situation out there? Does that dictate how you run the program? Like, can all of your kids practice at home? I mean, we kind of talked about this earlier with you, right? And how does that look? You told us from the standpoint of a student, but how does that look from a teacher? How do you have to create your program based on anything there?
Okay, I'm happy you asked that, because the way I teach is from a teacher who remembers when he was a child. Okay. So
you teach as you were taught.
As I was taught, but my experiences, my mom had me practicing in a garage. Yeah. Because we had a 3-bedroom home, which was nice. But
mine was 2 bedrooms. See, so excuse me, Prince Charles.
Right. See, right. Exactly. But
now we're having the low income wars.
But we have students who live in a 1-bedroom with 5 siblings. Yeah. Right. So when the kids tell me, which is daily, oh, my parents don't like the noise and things like that, especially when you're a beginner. Yeah. I understand that. So what I do, I give kids time throughout the week, throughout the day to practice. Okay. Just like today, this morning, the entire period, you have an opportunity to practice. I'll walk around and we'll work through certain measures. But I know for a fact that you're practicing because I'm here with you. If you practice at home, great. If you don't, I don't even force the kids. I don't have practice records.
Yeah.
You know what? Don't worry about it. I'll make sure you practice. They come in before school. They stay later to practice in the band room. I'm there with them. Everything is, is fine because I know what it's like. I know what it's like.
Well, there's a lot of things that go on with that. There's mom or dad says no. There's a landlord that says no.
Yep.
Here we share instruments. You can't practice on a shared instrument if it's out there. And then you talked about the jobs.
Right.
I'm sure that kid that was 15 as the line cook wasn't the only kid with a job there.
Absolutely.
And I'll say this too, and I know you're very humble about this. Your kids sound excellent. So it's not like that's not working for you there. I mean, other issues that come with that too. Do you get a lot of we get a lot of all of a sudden the doctor's appointments, the dentist appointments that have to happen. And I didn't understand it until I realized, you have to use your insurance benefits by this point. Which is why the dentist only has hours during band rehearsal.
Right. Yeah. Don, man, I got to the point where I just stopped making excuses.
Yeah.
Like, certain things, I deal with it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right to deal with it. I deal with it. I got tired of being frustrated with that. I don't have a full band. This year, I have not had one rehearsal with any of my ensembles with every student there.
Yeah.
It's been like that for years. So why am I going to complain about it? It's not going to change. So what I do is I work with the kids who are there. If you missed, we'll find an opportunity for you to work with your section leader, and it works.
Yeah.
The parents are this. They're not allowing the kids to do that. I'm not going to sit and complain about that.
Yeah.
Nothing changed. That's
control what you
time.
can control.
Yeah, exactly. We have that going on. A lot of times, I always tell people as well, I don't think the number of kids who take advantage of extracurricular activities have changed. I think we have more options now. So what I'm saying is 30 years ago, all you really had was band and maybe basketball, right? Yeah. Well, now those kids who would normally join band, now they have the chess club, the drama and things like that. So the programs are smaller. And so I don't fuss about size anymore. If you're active in something, I'm okay with that. And I have kids who want to take part in speech, or I have kids who want to do sports. I'm okay with that. I have several kids who are star basketball players. I remember when I was in school how the teachers worked for me. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not going to withhold, especially middle school. I want you to go out there and figure out what you really want to do. And I'm here to support you. And because of that, their relationship, now they respect me. Now they'll respond. Now they may actually go home and practice because they want to actually do right by the band.
All right. So here's the next question. Mm-hmm. You ever get tired of it?
Okay, let me see. I never get tired of teaching and working with students.
Okay.
Because I always think about my purpose. The purpose is greater than music. So that right there drives me. I'm at home sleeping at night thinking about situations and how I can't wait to get back to a certain kid who was right on the verge of that breakthrough.
Yeah.
I get tired of the adults getting in the way of students being successful.
Okay.
And so I think sometimes I get tired of watching situations take place that are not in the best interest of the kids.
And are we talking testing? Are we talking funding?
All of that.
Are we talking everything that isn't instruction and discovery and education?
Everything. I think I believe that sometimes people who are disconnected from children, they make decisions about children that are not valid, or they're not relevant.
And what's a disconnect? Are we talking? We can go federal government, we can go state, we can also go central office in a school district.
All of that.
Okay.
Right. I believe that the person, if you're
And I don't think that's offensive to say, by the way, either, just because if you're not in the classroom every day.
Right. You don't know.
And I'll say this too. I am not over at the central office every day. So I don't know what they're dealing with.
Right. And that's true. And that's true. And I guess I was hesitant to say because I don't want anybody, because in Harvey, they support what we do.
Yeah.
And so I don't want anybody to think I'm actually attacking Harvey. But I literally get emotional when I look at some of the school districts and they're taking away band and they're doing it for reasons, I can consider them to be silly reasons. But I believe that every administrator, every superintendent, if you're actually the director of board education for the state, for whatever your position is, you should at least be in front of a group of kids at least once a semester. teaching a class. If you're in these positions, chances are you have a degree.
Yeah.
Go get a subs license. Get in the classroom, get in front of students at least once a semester. So therefore, when you're sitting at these tables making these decisions, you can speak from experience, even though it's not a lot of experience. Many superintendents, many principals, if you ask them the last time they've been in a classroom, especially superintendents, we're talking 10 years maybe, 8 years, times change.
Well, and from a consistent basis, too. We have administrators here that will sub all of the time.
Okay.
If they can't find a sub, and then we actually have our building administration. They've made a commitment over the past year or two, like they're all taking a study hall.
Okay.
So they're at least in that part of it there.
And I've never heard of that, and maybe it's because I am at the middle school.
Sure,
but I haven't heard of it at that level.
Well, and you think about we as music teachers have to do administrative tasks.
Right,
so.
right.
No, I don't think that's controversial. Controversial at all. I worked with Dan Moore at Naperville North. I'll never forget him talking about. He had a philosophy about. After you've taught so many years, you should mentor people. And, after a further amount of time, this would be a good administrative level. And that was his thing, too. He thought all administrators should teach at least one class.
At least. Do
you have any administrative... I know you have a Type 75.
Right. Not formally.
Okay.
No, I'm the director of bands for the entire district. So the elementary portion of our program is declining just simply because of the enrollment levels.
Sure.
At the elementary level, you have a lot of families moving in and out.
Yeah. What's mobility rate? It's like 20-30% or so?
It's really high.
Okay.
It's really high, yes. So, again, when we talk about getting tired, I feel like I'm just getting started.
Okay.
I will say my goals have shifted from when I began. I was a really ambitious first year teacher. Sure. I had these goals of musical excellence. How well the kids sound, and I want to one day do this and do that. My goal was to make it to the Prairie State Jazz Festival and be asked back to come perform that evening. I wanted to win the Golden Apple. I wanted to play at Midwest. These are my goals. And back in 2004, 2005, we had a really good band. I was all about practice. I'm having the kids practice every day after school for 3 hours, and we would win trophies and things like that. Well, it was this one event where I had symphonic band and jazz band. The symphonic band competed against maybe 30-something schools. The jazz band competed against maybe 7 schools. Well, we performed. The jazz band sounded horrible. The symphonic band played. They sounded phenomenal. The scores came back. The jazz band received first place with the rating of excellent. The jazz band, they went bananas, man. They started, screaming, "Oh, yes, we won." And I'm still ticked off because, you all sounded like trash, but yet now all of a sudden you're happy. You were just down a few minutes ago. Well, the symphonic band came in 6th place with a score of superior.
Okay.
Now these kids are crying. Now I hear the jazz band students speaking to the symphonic band students saying, that's why you all came in 6th, we came in 1st. I went ballistic.
Yeah.
And at that time I realized like, whoa, I'm doing this all wrong, because if they're responding this way, I'm not doing my part. I'm actually projecting something that I shouldn't be.
Sure.
And so it was around then I shifted and said, you know what? I took all the trophies from the band room. Right now we don't have any trophies in the band room.
Okay.
And this was over 15 years ago. They're in the closet. So I never wanted a trophy to dictate a student and their standards. For me, I wanted you to do your best regardless. I don't care if you come in last place, just do your best.
Yeah.
And at that point I started shifting my approach, In fact, right after that, I began to take more time off of the bandstand, and I wanted the kids to begin to spend time with each other in a healthy way, whether it's tutoring each other. But it really hurt me to see one student talk down about another student, same program, because of a trophy.
Yeah.
And so at that point, again, we shifted. We played. Musical excellence was still important to me, but I was more so concerned about the character of my students. And I would call them out anytime they would say things that showed that they were getting a big head or becoming arrogant. I would call them out on it. So at one point I wanted trophies. I'm a young band director, but then it was more so I wanted my kids to always know that they had to do their best. And what I found was the music got even better.
Okay.
the more time they spent off the stand, the better the music sounded on the stand. And so I would begin to promote the importance of them working with each other, making sure that if one person is down, you're encouraging them. I tell them, I can yell at you, but when I walk away, you better be encouraging the person that I just yelled at. And then sooner or later, we end up auditioning and being accepted to Midwest. So I found power in that process.
Okay. It's interesting. I talked with another guest or two about this before. I'm still unable to break that. And for me, I think it was growing up where maybe there was no validity to anything else that I was doing. So when I was doing band, and especially with the reputation our hometown had, we'd go and we get this trophy. Like, man, that's hard for me to break. I'm trying.
Right.
We have a festival we're doing this year. Like, I promised one of our previous guests, Matt Temple, I said I'm going to enter his exhibition this year, and we are.
Right.
Okay. There's that, but so was that a struggle to get that going? And because my other thing too is always, we were talking about administrators, and I'm not trying to paint administration as evil, but now I don't have any hardware.
Right. So
show me what you're doing.
Now, with that said, I'm not saying we didn't do any competitions.
Sure.
But that wasn't most
okay.
of it. So what happened, again, the music, it got even better, and we began to bring more trophies home.
Okay.
And so, but that wasn't.
Then we're fine. Cool.
But that wasn't my focus. If you enter Brooks Middle School, we have an entire trophy case dedicated to the band, because I do want the community to feel pride in that. But I want the students to know that doesn't come before you as a person.
Sure.
All right. And so if we go to a competition, if we win first, great. If we don't, when we that's okay as well. But when we leave, I need to know that you gave your absolute best.
Yeah.
And I'm totally okay with whatever the outcome is. And with that said, I also understand that I got to a place in my career where I didn't have to prove anything. The community, they know me. The administration, they know me. So I don't have to necessarily go to a competition. I did begin to take the students out more in the community, whether it's the Ingalls Hospital, the festivals downtown. So we did the Chicago Jazz Festival, Chicago Blues Festival, and all of these new things that I was doing was showing community. So like the Blues Festival, we were with Fernando Jones. He took a liking to the band program, and he took us under his wing, and now we're family. Orbit Davis, Chicago Jazz Philharmonic, he came in, took the band program, and I began to see the importance of these relationships and the importance of community, because I can't do it all by myself.
Sure.
I think sometimes too many band directors feel like, okay, this is my band program. These are my kids, and you forget that they're going to leave you.
Yeah.
And I believe we have an opportunity to enlarge their network while they're under our wings, especially when we have phenomenal programs, people actually looking at you. So if I'm out in public with my students, in fact, I'll tell you this story. I was a guest conductor for ILMEA District 1. One of my saxophone players, he wanted to just hang out all day with me. So he's there with me. We rehearse. He's sitting in on the rehearsal, just listening. Well, when we're walking through the hallways, he saw Greg Ward, who's Greg Ward is, he's phenomenal alto saxophonist. And so I'm saying, hey, I introduced the kid to Greg, and I kind of let them talk for a minute.
Sure.
That kid will never forget that. And that's going to be something that he takes with him after he leaves me.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's part of my job, to make connections for these kids so they can, when they're 25, they still have these connections. I want them to grow and understand their community, understand their role in the community, understand the importance of taking care of one another in the community. And you also asked about some things that I find in low income areas. I find everybody is competitive, which you find that everywhere. But the problem in these low income areas is you all don't have the luxury of being that competitive where you actually want to fight another school because they play better than you.
Yeah.
You get to the point where it's a basketball team playing against each other. You lose. Now you're crying. You want to fight. It's different. It's almost territory, which I don't like that. And so what I do is, with the band, when we go to festivals, I tell my students, you are not allowed to eat lunch with this band. You have to find another school, find a section of another school, ask them if you can sit with them. sit down and talk.
Yeah.
Because I need you to know that once you leave me, you all will be in the same community, and I need for you all to be a part of the community together, and not feel like you're rivals. So I really dislike that, especially in the low income areas, because you all need each other.
Yeah.
So that's, those things are important to me. I don't know if I got off track, but
no, it's fine. And those are interesting things to think about, because I think if you are maybe feeling disadvantaged and you lose a contest of some sort, like, you don't feel bad in that discipline. You feel bad as a person. And maybe sometimes because of somebody else's words, or just, a lot of times too, probably your own belief system in yourself and what you've been brought up with there.
You know what else I find? And I don't know how true this is, but I noticed, I'll speak of sports for right now. We have, we may have students who they do very well with basketball. And, they come in and they practice. It's all about winning. They'll go play a school, beat them by like 60 points. The school that they beat, the kids, okay, good job.
Yeah.
We lost. They're not crying or anything, because this is just one moment in their, they're not totally counting on basketball.
Yeah.
They have other things.
They have,
their mind is set on,
stakes aren't as high.
Right. Yeah. You might want to be an attorney or this, that, and the other, where we have a lot of our students, I'm going to play, I want to be an NBA. I want to be a rapper, which, if that's your dream. But, you guys are putting all of your eggs in this basket. You're not going to class. You're talking back to teachers. Reality, they're not really dealing with reality a lot of times, as far as some things that I've seen over in the past. And it's not always the case, but, I'm trying to really help the students like deal with reality.
Yeah. We've had quite a few students like that here too. And we certainly try. I mean, the big thing I try to talk to the kids about is like every single person you see out there. I said, you got to realize they're a business. Also, like they also need to know how to read and write.
Right. Absolutely.
They don't want to get. I said a lot of these people get screwed over by their accountant, or they don't know, exactly how to promote themselves. And I said, it really does matter in that sense.
Right.
I'd love to segue to jazz.
Okay.
And this is, again, this is my show, so I'll be selfish and ask for things I need help with. So jazz for me just has not clicked like I've wanted it to over my career. And I look at what we play. We try to do a lot of the standards. We'll play things I think that are appropriate for the kids. I haven't put in a jazz method book yet. We try to have good instrumentation with it. We give the kids the resources. I understand that over my 13, 14 years of teaching, the common denominator has been me. Where does one start, do you think? And maybe you need more information, but where does one start to have their students be successful in jazz? And I guess what's the definition of being successful in jazz? Because I'll be honest, it's really hard for me.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me.
Well, I'll say this. I think it's a bit easier when you're at the elementary level.
Okay.
Than it is the high school level. As you heard me talk about earlier, my background was actually tuba and classical.
Yeah.
When I entered NIU, Northern Illinois University,
which is jazz powerhouse.
I entered that school on a tuba scholarship to play in the Philharmonic.
Okay.
So my background was not jazz. I went and
could you be further away?
Man. So I actually went to NIU. I didn't even know what rhythm changes were.
Okay.
Now, fortunately, David Eanes, the way he teaches you to be a musician. Obviously, through. Maybe not obviously, but in my high school years, I was really into hip hop, R&B, so I had this, I appreciated soul music.
Sure. So
I played in the jazz band in high school, but I didn't study jazz. I knew how to be a musician, I had great musicianship. So when I entered NIU, my scholarship was for tuba, but because I also played bass and I knew music, I ended up getting accepted into the jazz lab band with Ron Carter. That was the second band. Again, I was a musician, and at that point, Ron Modell was in the top band, and they needed a bass trombone player. They knew I played a little bass trombone. They placed me in the top band on bass trombone.
That's right. We played a wedding together,
right?
Once, and you were on
exactly.
Okay.
And so I played one semester with Ron Modell. He retired, and then Ron Carter, he became the director of the jazz ensemble. And at that time, I was the only person playing an instrument that wasn't their main instrument. I think I was the only person, other than maybe Kevin Schambach, who actually was not a jazz major.
Okay.
So I say all this to say, I learned jazz when I was much older at a fundamental level. I wasn't the person taking solos. So everything that Professor Carter would say, I'm really listening because I didn't know any other way.
Sure.
So all of these concepts, I took it in and I applied it as a I guess I was 19 as an adult. So as I learned them at that fundamental level. And so once I finally became a teacher, I didn't know anything about conducting a jazz band. I mean, I've had my R&B bands and things like that,
sure.
But conducting a youth jazz band, I didn't know anything about it. Now, I say it's easier at the elementary level because the kids, they don't know any better.
Yeah.
So what I did was I knew all of these wonderful jazz musicians. I would always call my friends to come and hang out with me and my students. We watch videos together. If I didn't know something, I would tell the students, I don't know, let's find out. Click. Mm-hmm. And so I spent a lot of time learning with my students, and I knew I can play better than them. If you're a fifth grade trumpet player, I can play better than you. I'm not good, but I can play better than you. And so all of these concepts that I knew that I learned from Ron Carter, I began to teach the students through my poor trumpet playing.
Okay.
And if I didn't know something, like historically, I didn't know a lot of things. A lot of jazz history, I didn't know those things. I didn't have jazz history. I did have jazz bass lessons with Marlene Rosenberg, which was great.
Okay.
But we learned bass. I didn't know anything about repertoire. I didn't know anything about history. We learned bass. I began to learn rhythm changes.
Sure.
So I would say this: middle school, elementary, I had to humble myself and learn with the kids.
Okay.
I think it's a little different in high school. I think it'll be a bit more difficult to do that.
Well, and we have a number of kids here in our program that start band in high school.
Okay.
Too. So, that's what I've been looking at. Like, is there a method book? Am I just needing to maybe become very aware of articulations a little bit more and how to approach that? Do I need to improv myself and get better at that?
My suggestion would be to first begin to listen and listen for enjoyment.
Okay.
Find a couple of bands that maybe you like. Let the kids listen to it and have conversation about it. What do you like? Why don't you like it? Because even now, every year I let the kids listen to music. If you don't like it, I'm okay as long as you tell me why.
Sure.
And then once you begin to listen with those ears, then we begin to pick up different concepts. And most band directors, they should be musicians of some sort. And if you don't have a jazz band already, then anything you do will be better than what you had. So my suggestion would be to listen. I can't say that I would say, hey, go to a method book first.
Okay.
I think that's kind of going about it the wrong way. I think you can go to the method book once you begin to enjoy it for yourself, because then you begin to understand the language. Just like when I learned Spanish or attempted to learn Spanish in high school, my teacher didn't just say, hey, here's the book, this is what you say. We listened first.
So what's the Roosevelt Griffin recommended discography here? Do we have like Ellington Live at Newport?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's one. I love Lincoln Center's Ellington CD. I forget the name of it because I have it on my iTunes. But it has not Cottontail, Sea Jam Blues.
Okay.
It has wow.
You're gonna get me a copyright strike for that,
right? Okay.
No.
But yeah, so actually, I do have a list. Maurice Brown from Hip to Bop.
Okay.
He's a trumpet player, and he kind of clashes hip hop and bebop.
Okay.
And I won't say clash, but joins them, and kids love it. Another one recently, Foundations, Rajiv Halim. Kids love Foundations, and I try to bring them local people as well.
Sure. And are these more recent ones now that you're talking about?
Hip to Bop was probably 2004.
Okay. Because this is embarrassing, but I'm like, man, the only things I can always think of are the things from the 50s, 60s,
right.
70s, and I guess that's an approach too of just
it is.
like try to find a something that somebody's alive today.
Right. and the thing is, these particular albums, the kids love it. So when I first started teaching at Brooks, right now the band Bunch of Sweethearts, top of the class. When I first started at Brooks, I had some kids. I'm talking about some like they were hard. I mean, like I said, the one kid who was working. I used to always catch kids gambling, and so sitting down, maybe with that Duke Ellington CD it didn't necessarily work then. So. Sure. For some of those students, I said, hey, check out this album. And it was Maurice Brown, Hip to Bop. It's like, oh, man, I love that. Can I get a copy?
Yeah.
And that was really their introduction, and they wanted more and more and more. Okay. And then we finally got to, Basie, because I'm a huge Basie fan, obviously, hanging out with Ron Carter. And so like now we spend a lot of time watching videos, okay. So as far as albums, like I said, the main one I use now, because I turn kids over every few years, so I have the same playlist to get them started. I would say my main one would be that album from the Lincoln Center. Yeah.
Okay.
Especially since a lot of those the people in the videos and on the album, I can take the kids and say, hey, that's so and so. Sean Jones is another one. Kids love Sean Jones.
Okay.
Because of the way it makes them feel. So I like to actually access the emotions first and then start adding other things.
With the mechanics and everything. Yeah. Great. Well, then that leads me into my next selfish question. Mm-hmm. Is something I've always wanted to do was actually start a little music school out mm-hmm. here at some point. And you did that yourself. And I think, what's the Griffin Institute now? 2 years old, 3 years old, longer than that?
4.
4 years old. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's something I would love to talk about. How that came about, some pros and cons of starting your own business there, and where the Griffin Institute's going to be.
So the Griffin Institute came about. I actually, back in 2005, I really wanted to start my own business. I cut hair. My mom let me have a barbershop in my basement.
So what haven't you done? How old are you, by the way?
41.
No, you're not.
Yeah, 41.
Why do you look younger than me? I'm taking a sick day. All right. Yeah. So sorry, you're cutting hair in mom's basement.
Right. So my mind, I always thought, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to try to figure out ways to make money doing things that I love.
Okay.
So anyway, so I started the Griffin School of Music back in like 2004, 05. And at that time, I realized that if I really wanted to make a difference, because at this time, this is when my mindset changed as far as seeing certain things with the kids. I said, well, if I want to make a difference, I want to do a not-for-profit, and I have to go back to school and know what I'm talking about and know how to do it. And that's when I stopped the Griffin School of Music, went and got my master's, my doctorate, and came back out and said, okay, now I'm ready. And so when I completed my doctorate,
how long did that take? The master's doctorate before?
I guess maybe 8 years. Total.
Okay, so truly committed to this idea. Then.
Yep. And so after I finished, throughout that time in school, I noticed a lot of kids, they were leaving me. I wanted to make sure I was able to track the students after they left me, because I wasn't sure where they would end up, and I wanted to keep my hands on them. So the Griffin Institute became more of a mindset of community, meaning I have my hands on you. I have to make sure that you're successful, and I have to make sure that you have the right mentorship to, again, have the best future possible for you. A lot of times kids would leave Brooks Middle School and they would go various places. They might move to the next town over, and I wouldn't hear from them. So I wanted to keep track of the kids. And so the Griffin Institute became like a membership type of thing, where no matter where you are, you're still a part of the Griffin Institute. And so I'd actually opened a facility where kids can come on the weekday, on the weekends, to hang out, to play music, to do homework, to play video games, to meet people. Because a component of the Griffin Institute is mentorship. So all my huge network, I would get friends to come by and just hang out with students and talk to them. So, if you're a college professor, you have your job, but you might hang out at the Griffin Institute just to say hello to the kids, maybe give a lesson. And everything was all voluntarily.
Okay.
So
it's like a community center.
It's a community, exactly what it is.
It just happens to be a background of we shared this musical experiment.
Exactly. And so my goal was never to create musicians per se, but to help students figure out what they wanted to do. If you wanted to be a musician, that's fine, but more so give them the resources and the support needed.
It's funny you're talking about that, because before we sat down here, we were talking about the history of band programs and stuff, and you were saying that you weren't always, sometimes aware of the history of programs everywhere. And it's funny you bring that up, because I think about all the documents we have out here that show people would get done working at the steel mill and then they'd go play in their band with their work friends.
Right.
So it's funny to hear then about what you're doing with Griffin Institute, which is, let's kind of, maybe it's not work related or something else, but let's bring back a social community thing that again formed in music there. Right.
And I wanted to take the education out of the classroom and make it a lifestyle.
Okay.
Right. So because that's one of the things I noticed back in 2005, 2006, when I shifted my gears and began to put more emphasis on character and family and community. I began to see families change, and there was a young lady who didn't have a really close relationship with her father. I'm at the jazz showcase, with my wife. I look back now, he's with his daughter. They were in the back because they were introduced to the jazz showcase because we opened for Dudley Owens one year, and that was something for them. So the whole band experience was special for them. So I believe that this experience began to build relationships within families as well. And I said, well, I wanted to do that for the masses because we're hurting out here in our community. And if I know about something that can help the community, who am I to keep it to myself?
Yeah.
And so that's how we actually.
It's excellent. Yeah. Excellent. So then what's next for the Griffin Institute? Do you see it changing at all? Do you see additions?
So one of the things that has been very successful is the GI Jams. And so right now, the GI Jams, we have jam sessions, weekly jam sessions where each week we have a different host, professional host. They perform for the house, which is students.
Yeah.
We feed the students. Then there's a component where the host speaks to the house, whether it's a mini lesson or something, advice. And then those children, they'll have an opportunity to perform with the host.
Okay.
That right there has been our staple. I mean, it's been very successful. This year we're going to be traveling. We're going to be hosting traveling jams. So we might want to get one here.
All right.
where the Griffin Institute will fund everything. We'll provide the food and everything, but we want to actually give students all over the experience to perform and meet and talk with professionals on a very relaxed level, where they're really learning, but not really looking at it as school.
Sure.
And as far as the future, I just want to bring more opportunities for students to play outside of the band room because they aren't at home practicing. Mm-hmm. Now, if you know that you're going to play every week, now you have a reason to practice that, a reason that your band director didn't give you.
Yeah.
This, you can take ownership.
Some good positive peer pressure.
Right.
Too,
right.
There. Well, thanks for coming out, man.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun and learned a lot sitting with you here. What's next besides Griffin Institute? Anything else on the docket?
Yeah. So lately I've been involved in some projects. I did the Teaching Through performance beginning jazz band, and I just released with Mary Jo Poppage and a host of others the Rehearsing the Jazz Band book, in which I talk also about community and things like that. So I'm actually working on a project where I can share a lot of these approaches to music education from my view.
Sure.
So I'm working on a book right now to release that, and then I want to take some time, and I have a 13 and an 11-year-old and a wife, so I want to really make sure I'm spending quality time with them.
Yeah.
And so that's the immediate plans.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
We have, starting us off, a very special group right out of Harvey, Illinois. Under the masterful direction of Mr. Roosevelt Griffin, we want to start things off with the Brooks Junior High School Jazz Ensemble. Let's give it up for them.